Everybody could please take their seats. My name is Herb Wesson, joined by my dear friend Ed Reyes. I want to welcome everyone to this morning's committee hearing. We have a few items today, so we have a light holiday schedule. Mr. City Attorney, we do not have a quorum, so we're going to move forward anyway, and anything that we do until we get a quorum will be deemed to communicate from the chair. Okay? Alan?
Sir, yes, sir.
Is there any message that you want to give to the public before, since this is our last committee hearing of the year? Any pearl of wisdom or?
Wow, that's very thoughtful of you, sir. On behalf of the entire committee, happy holidays to one and all.
Neil, Mr. City Attorney, any?
I would join in those comments. Well, it's appropriate.
Well, you can tell that we're really a fun group, man.
I'm sure there's absolutely no way I could be more articulate than the clerk and the city attorney on this one.
I would just shoot. Okay, now, I know that I can count on this man, my wingman, to say something riveting. Mr. Reyes.
Buenos días, feliz Navidad, próspero año nuevo. Happy New Year, folks, and hope you have a good one. And I want to thank the city family for the hard work this year. I know it's been a trying one, but it's one that, as one person said, never waste a good crisis. So let's make the best of it. And I think we'll be hearing from that gentleman real soon. So thank you very much.
Okay, see, that's why he's the closer. That's why he's the closer. Okay, with that said, Ms. Barclay, let's rock and roll. Item 4.
Item 4 is a report from the Community Redevelopment Agency and the Chief Legislative Analyst on a resolution relative to an amendment to the redevelopment plan for the Earthquake Disaster Assistance Project for portions of Council District 3.
Okay, we'll adopt the CLA report on that item. Item 5.
Item 5 is a report from the CRA and the CLA on a resolution relative to a loan agreement with New Horizons San Fernando Valley Association for the Retarded Incorporated for the development of an affordable group home at 19013 Armenta Street.
Okay, on item 5, we'll adopt the CLA report, bringing us to item 6.
Item 6 is a report from the CRA and the CAO relative to executing an owner participation agreement with the Young Men's Christian Association of Metropolitan Los Angeles for the purchase of an operating covenant for the Munger Family YMCA project.
Okay, on that item, we'll adopt the CAO report. That brings us to item 7.
Item 7 is a report from the Los Angeles Housing Department and the CAO relative to approving a new bond team for qualified bond underwriters, financial advisors, and trustees.
Okay, on that item, we will continue that item. Mr. City Attorney, the actions that we've just taken will be deemed communiques from the chair until we get a quorum.
Yes, sir.
That brings us to item number 1.
Item 1 is a communication from the mayor relative to the appointment of Mr. Douglas Guthrie as permanent general manager of the Los Angeles Housing Department.
Okay. If you come forward, please. Good morning. Before you start, where is he at? Rushmore. Come forward for a second, if you would.
Good morning.
And have a seat.
Good morning, Councilman.
Good morning. You know, I think I've said that before, said this before, but I want to say it again. And I'll use sports as an example. The football teams that generally win are the teams that, in the event that a player is hurt or a player signs with another team, somebody else steps up, fills the void, and gets the job done. In my view, that's exactly what you have done. I want to personally thank you. I think that you did an excellent job in keeping the department moving forward. And I'm sure that the city we will always be calling on you to come in and be the quarterback, step in and be the starting quarterback. But I just wanted to say officially and on the record that it was a pleasure working with you, and I can say that on behalf of Andrew, who works with me, and I just wish you continued success. Thank you for everything that you've done.
Thank you,
Mr. Reyes?
Yeah, I also wanted to compliment you on the fact that it was seamless. You just flowed right in, it kept moving, and the fact that you kept that rhythm, if you will, moving the department in light of EREP and budget cuts and everything that does to morale of a department. I think it's important that the spirit and the attitude you had was a very positive one, and it helped the city. So thank you for all those families that you've helped out.
Well, thank you for your kind words, council members. Mercedes Marquez set the table very nicely, and with the assistance and hard work of the department staff, they did a tremendous job in assisting me in working with this council and this committee for the guidance, and it was really them that did the work. And I believe that we're turning this department over to in good hands, and the department is well positioned to move forward to meet the housing needs for the city. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Job well done. Okay, before you start, I have to show Meg. Here's what. Could you pass that? That's a picture of my grandson. I know you've been waiting to see that. I told you, he's growing and good looking, looks like me. Okay. Yeah, I've been humble my whole life. See, I was just stalling. Now before we begin with Doug, we've just been joined by Richard Alarcon, so we now have a quorum. Richard, unless he says that he has a problem, the items that we dealt with earlier, items 4, 5, and 6, will be, sent to the council as a committee action, not as a communique of the chair.
Correct.
Mr. City Attorney.
That'd be correct.
That'll be correct. Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
Could you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yes, well, thank you very much for the opportunity for me to be here today, and an opportunity to work on behalf of the great city of Los Angeles. A little bit of my background, and I've had an opportunity to meet with many of you individually, but I am coming here from Chicago. I've spent my career in the field of affordable housing, working at public levels, at the federal government, at the local government. I worked for Mayor Harold Washington back in the 1980s in Chicago. I've worked at a public housing agency in Chicago. I've also spent a significant amount of time working in the nonprofit community, running a national nonprofit organization, the National Equity Fund, and most recently on the private development side of things, developing large-scale mixed-income development in Chicago and working in Detroit and other cities as well. So my whole career has been in this field, and I've had just a great opportunity to work with some very respected professionals in the field, and I've really sat on all sides of the table. So I know that Los Angeles is a different place than Chicago. The city's different. The politics will be different.
Weather's different.
The weather's definitely different. But the challenges of affordable housing are very much the same. It's difficult, and at times it can feel overwhelming. But I know we've got many challenges here in the city of Los Angeles. But as I understand it, there's a great team that's been put together at the housing department from Rushmore and others of the leadership that I've met. I can't wait to get started and to learn from them and to work with them.
We've just been joined by Councilmember Jan Perry, and I want to again reiterate that we were joined moments ago by Councilmember Richard Alarcon, who new member of this committee who came and shook things up, sat in the wrong chair, took the bracket, I guess you would say, off of the microphone. See, every committee has to have a rebel, somebody that's independent. I mean, so you're gonna, is this a new style, or you're gonna hit me with that thing? Okay, you know, you referenced that, you recognize that Los Angeles is different from Chicago and some of the other entities where you've worked, and it is. We have a lot of needs and a lot of desires. So, hey, let's say everything goes well. We confirm you begin work. What's going to be the first couple of things that you think that you're going to try to do when you officially become the head of this department?
Well, as I understand it, there are currently a backlog of affordable housing developments, and due primarily to diminishing resources to finish out some of those commitments that have been made. So one of the primary things to do is to find increasing resources for the huge demands, needs, and commitments that are outstanding. So I want to understand better, what is on the table and what we can move forward quickly. So that will be one of the first issues. There is a foreclosure crisis in the city of Los Angeles, and I want to take a hard look at that. I know there are some things that the housing department can do with regards to the neighborhood stabilization program, moving that forward, but also to see if there aren't some ways that we can work with the federal government and with the Treasury Department and with HUD to more efficiently implement some of the foreclosure mitigation efforts that are currently underway that haven't been moving as quickly as they really need to move. I think those are two big items right there to get started on.
Okay, and the other thing that I want to mention, and you and I chatted about it when we met, is that it is important that you continue to cultivate your relationship with Mercedes Marquez. Not only was it an honor and a pleasure working with her, we know that she is still committed. I mean, albeit on a national scale, but she still has a very warm spot in her heart where it relates to Los Angeles. And I think that that's going to be critical for the city and for you as a department head, because whatever occurs, I think that her, and the fact that Yolanda's there, they will continue to try to ensure that Los Angeles gets its fair share. With that said, Mr. Reyes, did you?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, when I had referred to that quote, I was speaking of Mr. Guthrie. When we did meet, I was giving him this doomsday scenario, how terrible things are and how tough things will be, and his response was, which I appreciate very much, is there are no easy solutions. There's no ready answers. What we can do is do the best we can to move the city forward and to do the best that we can. And when he mentioned this quote about making the best, not wasting a crisis, that puts things in perspective in terms of how we look at ourselves and how we essentially assess our strengths and build on them and overcome those challenges that we have. But we're all in this together. This is an international environment we're in that is creating this national crisis that really just boils down to what's happening on our streets, in our neighborhoods. And changing that is going to be a very, very demanding and tough task. Now, I know for years now, as councilor, I've been pushing for housing for our working class, for our folks who clean our buildings, folks who take care of our children, folks who take care of our seniors, the folks that we see riding on the bus at 4 or 5 in the morning and going across town because they can't live near where they work. And these are the same folks whose families can't be there to take care of their children when they get out of school. And we wonder why we are at where we're at when we talk about our youth. So it's daunting, especially when there is no money, when banks are still being held accountable for all the money they've already received. I've yet to see that in our streets. And these are the kinds of challenges we have. So, Mr. Guthrie, I wanted to ask you, if there was a strategy, if there was an approach that you felt could carry over from your experience in the other sectors, whether it's the private or the government or your relationship with those who you've developed networks. If there was an approach, what do you see as the strongest assets or the strongest tools that might be available to you as you responded to this challenge?
Well, I have become a firm believer in mixed income housing, and there are a lot of different definitions of mixed income housing, but a couple of the most recent developments I worked on, the Cabrini Green redevelopment in Chicago and redevelopment of the Stateway Gardens public housing site, where we had a broad economic distribution of housing opportunities. I think that is a good model, and I think that it can work. And I think there's room for market rate housing, there's room for housing for the poor, and there's room for working class housing. And I think you can devise creative ways to do that. So I like the concept of mixed income housing. I think there are going to be many opportunities to do that here in Los Angeles, and perhaps particularly with some of the transit-oriented opportunities here in the city. I understand there's been a lot of effort, a lot of planning efforts around transit-oriented development, and I want to take a hard look at that and to see if we can't devise some targeted strategies along those lines.
And my last note is there was a real concerted effort, a very comprehensive one, where a team in the housing department, actually working with planning, working with Department of Transportation, had identified lots that had capacity to build housing that would absorb the needs of those local areas. And in Highland Park, there was strategies put in place, and one crisis hit after another, and it just kind of got lost in the turbulence, if you will, of all the different pressures. But I believe in the department, you already have almost a tailor-made, programmatic products that can be applied right away. So when we talk about what President Obama is doing right now in discussing how do we create jobs, this city controls so much land and parking lots that are underused, that are dormant, that have incredible air rights that can stimulate these scenarios. I mean, as soon as in the next few months, I mean, those packages are already in your house, if you will. I mean, it's already there, and I would hope we can move in that direction while looking at the foreclosure issue. So I'm looking forward to working with you. You have a great staff, and I look in the audience, and you've got tremendous leadership, many gifted employees who are burning the midnight oil. I've seen them rise to the occasion time and time again, and I think you're going to have a very strong support there, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you very much.
One quick question, and if you could explain the circumstances. Have you ever worked with a man named Barack Obama?
I had the pleasure of working with him when I was at the Chicago Housing Authority in the late 1980s. I had a series of meetings with a young community organizer that was representing Oak Hill Garden residents. My memory of him was that he looked like he was 15 years old, but he was extraordinarily impressive, and I do recall that. I haven't had any recent opportunities to work with him, but being from Chicago, I'm pretty familiar with and friends with a number of the people within his administration, and very comfortable in contacting them. And could I also say briefly in response to your question on Mercedes Marquez, I've already had good discussions with Mercedes, and we're trying to get on our calendar for me to go out to Washington, D.C. in January and sit down and spend some time with her and with the Secretary to see if we can't get off on a real quick footing here and identifying resources that are available to the city of Los Angeles.
Well, like I said, she was great to work with, and she set the bar. Mr. Alicant?
Yeah, Mr. Guthrie, we had the opportunity to meet briefly the other day, and I mentioned a couple of things to you. I'm looking at your resume in detail now, and at every point there's something that's fascinating. You know, I noticed you even graduated from Kent State University in 1971.
Yes.
It was a very interesting time at Kent State University. I was reading this one section. I want to read this one section, particularly for Mr. Reyes' benefit. In 1987, at the request of Mayor Harold Washington, took leadership role at the CHA during multiple challenges, including HUD investigations, forced removal of board members and CEOs, court challenges regarding housing desegregation. Roles included managing court-ordered scattered site development, federal court representation, staff and budget oversight, significant press representation. This must sound like a walk in the park compared to that situation some 22 years ago. The interesting thing about your resume is that it presents a very diverse background. You had the bureaucratic experience in the Chicago Housing Department for a significant number of years, and then you went into the Housing Authority, and then ultimately into the private sector to practice what you preached, I guess. The mixed use piece is very important. Just yesterday we had a key issue with regard to mixed use, because it appears the FHA is not cooperating with our vision, and we need a voice to try and perhaps change some of the federal regulations and guidelines with regard to mixed use recognition. If this city is going to transition, mixed use is a key element to it, and Ms. Perry and Mr. Reyes have been leaders on both those scores, and yet we are inhibited by federal guidelines, it seems, at this point. You mentioned the foreclosures. We need a federal advocate to fight for the principal reduction piece that I spoke of.
Yes.
But the greatest challenge, in my estimation, on the housing front facing Los Angeles is what I described to you as the challenge of changing us from a rental city to an ownership city, where people actually own a piece of the American pie, not just renting a place in the American geography. The city has become I think it's 60 to 70% of the people that live in Los Angeles live in a place they don't own. Financial literacy is a key element to that, but the mixed-use development process, particularly for our housing sites, our housing authority sites, is critical. And the experience that you've had to bring mixed income into some of these locations in Chicago, I think and other places will be of great value to us. But more than anything else, if we're going to transition into a community where the majority of the population actually own a home that they or live in a home that they own or their family owns, it's going to take a lot of federal advocacy. The feds are simply going to have to help us to recover some of that. So now that you've had a little time to think about it since we talked, I wanted to get to see if you've done any more thinking about the issue of home ownership versus rental, particularly in light of the foreclosure crisis, which probably exacerbates the problems moving forward.
Well, when it comes to home ownership, and that's principally what I've been working on the last few years, is affordable ownership opportunities. It's a tough thing to do, quite honestly. Ownership isn't the answer to all the problems, but rental housing isn't the answer to all the problems either. There needs to be a good mix and good opportunities in both, so that people have choices. Not everyone is well positioned or even desirous of being a homeowner, but there are a lot of people that are, and ownership brings a lot of qualities to a neighborhood as well, in terms of the sort of stabilizing a community with that long-term sort of commitment to the area. So there's room for ownership and there's room for rental and a good, solid housing policy for the city. I did get an opportunity. We met on Friday, so I rented a car and I drove out to your district just to take a look around a little bit, and it is a little bit different than Chicago. So I mean, you do have a lot of interesting ownership issues in particular. It looks to deal with out there. So I'm kind of anxious to actually go out with each of the members of the committee here once I'm on board to spend some time with you in your district, so we can identify those particular hot spots and those particular issues that are so important to you.
Well, let me just say that your experience speaks volumes for the potential that us working together can have, and so I'm very pleased at the mayor's selection. When reading your resume, it just jumps out at me why the mayor selected you. The kinds of things that you've done are exactly the kinds of things that I think the city of Los Angeles needs. I want to hone in on that home ownership issue. It's one thing for us to have a 40% ratio of rental, no problem. Senior citizens, students, young people need rental opportunities. But when you have rental at the extent of 65% or more, you have some serious issues with asset building, collateralization, and credit worthiness of your community, and access to capital becomes a huge problem. The divides between the haves and the have-nots is glaring, and it's glaring here in Los Angeles. So I want to emphasize that. But I also want to emphasize that we are at a key juncture immediately where the federal bailout money is being returned to the government, and it's an opportunity for us to seize a new direction with the bailout money that actually gets more pragmatic results in terms of real trickling down to the smallest people of our population in terms of wealth. And so whether it's small businesses or home or residential use, I really think we need a voice in Washington, in additional voices in Washington, fighting to get that money down to the people that need it the most during this economy. And I think you can be helpful in developing strategies in that regard.
Okay. Thank you.
You know, before I go to Ms. Perry, I'm sure everybody here, you know, maybe you see a photograph or you hear a word and it triggers something, and so you've got a jingle or a song in your brain and you can't figure out who. When you talked about Kent, the 4 Dead in Ohio, was that Jimi Hendrix then? Was who?
It's Crosby, Stills,
because I'm in here.
And
Crosby,
Young.
Stills, Nash, and Young. No, I'm just trying to. I mean, I could hear that, and when you were talking, and I'm trying to figure out who it was. So thank you, Mr. Reyes. So now I can continue.
I'm doing one of these cold case visions, and I'm trying to see what did he look like at Kent State University.
I have my personal stories about that. I'll be happy to share with you at any time.
Share right now, real quick.
Well, I was a student at Kent State back when all that happened, and actually it has a lot to do with why I do what I do now. It's been a long time. So one of the girls who was killed was a friend of mine, and I was with her.
Really?
Yes.
Oh my God.
So even to this day, it kind of brings back a lot of emotion, but it really makes you think long and hard about what you want to do with your life. And so I decided at that time to make a commitment, the best that I could, working in the field of urban studies and doing what I could to make things better, what little contributions I could make. So that really had a lot to do with what I do now, 40 years later.
Wow, it's amazing. The older we get, the smaller the world gets. I mean, that incident, those songs rallied a group of young people like yourself and me. Richard probably was right behind, and one day we will chat, and maybe you can share some of those
Well,
stories.
I'd be happy to do
But
that.
being from Ohio, as Miss Perry is from Ohio, and Kent State was basically spitting distance away from Cleveland, it was a very eye-opening experience for us as well. I think Miss Perry has a question.
Yeah, I did. Actually, my sister was there at the same time, too.
I want to say that's the name of the
Wow.
song, Ohio.
That was.
And the second question I had was, so where's my holiday card?
Oh, yours is coming. I just
Okay.
gave that to Meg.
I just wanted to know. It's okay. Just clear it up.
You'll have it today.
Okay. I appreciate you taking the time to meet with my staff, and I just wanted to ask you about building your management team. Mercedes had a good management team, and some of the key people have gone, they've left. One in particular has joined her in D.C. What sort of skill sets are you looking for in rebuilding your management team?
Well, I need to get an opportunity to meet my current management team first and understand what skill sets we do have. I've heard very good things about the department that had been built up by Mercedes over time, that had become a much stronger department than it had been prior to her being there. I've had an opportunity to briefly meet some of the key management team we have in place right now, and I'm excited to sit down and start working with them. One of the early things I'm going to have to do is take a look at the organization that is in place, see where the kind of gaps and holes are, identify quickly what I think some of the key needs might be that perhaps aren't currently being filled, take a look at the sort of budgetary constraints I'm sure we're going to be confronted with, and see what sort of changes, if any, really need to be made.
Okay. I want to thank you, sir. And before we take action, I have a comment card from the public. Noel Weiss, if you could come forward. And good morning.
Good morning, Chairman Wesson and members. It's amazing there is a circle of life. We all kind of return to our puppyhood in one form or another. One of the things that I think that it's important to bring out was the really role of the housing department is to take care of the tenant issues that exist. And unfortunately, with all due respect to the prior leadership, there was a shortfall with regard to that responsibility, and I would hope that Mr. Guthrie would take a look at that and try to remedy some of the difficulties and deficiencies that existed with regard to how the housing department basically takes care of the many tenant issues that exist in the city. And that's for the most disempowered of the people. Secondly, with regard to home ownership, I appreciate Mr. Alarcon's comments on that because TOPA, Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, is an idea that I've been pushing. It's in the housing element. The housing department is a critical component to that because it will unite the city, and I think it will provide the kind of housing opportunities that we need in a mixed income situation. There's no reason why a building can't be a hybrid ownership. We have, and again, the key to that obviously is the policymakers not encouraging speculation. We've had speculation blight all throughout the city, unfortunately. Lincoln Place being the worst example of it. 38 acres, 600 units vacant for 4 years, an absolute monument to the failure of our governance system. We have coming out of the Section 8 contracts. Those are expiring, got about 14,000 units in the next 10 years. This state law already gives tenants a TOPA right, tenant opportunity to purchase opportunity there. The housing department has not been as aggressive as it needs to be with regard to empowering those tenants. We are in a new era. We're talking about empowering the individuals and no longer top-down, bottom-up. And to the extent that the housing department and Mr. Guthrie can facilitate and participate that empowerment, even by having meetings. Again, I use Janice Hans-Watt's Gang Task Force as an example, but it really is very empowering. And if you go throughout the city and you sit down and you talk to the people and you welcome and you procure their ideas, I guarantee you that you will get a lot of great ideas that hopefully you'll be able to implement. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Guthrie. Meet Mr. Weiss. The first. So, without objection, we'll forward the recommendation to the City Council, and I believe that's to be heard today at 10. So, congratulations, and again, I look forward to sitting down and chatting with you. Ms. Barclay, does that bring us to item 2 or 3 or what?
Yes, sir, item 2.
Thank you very much.
Or 3. Would you like to do item 2?
I'm going to let you do whichever one, item 2.
Item 2 is communication from the mayor relative to the appointment of Mr. Moctezuma Esparza to the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority for the term ending June 30th, 2011.
Mr. Esparza, welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee.
And I'm going to let you just say a few words. In fact, your voice is so soothing, maybe you should just talk for the remainder of this hearing. But please tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm a native-born Angelino, born and raised in the Ramona Gardens Housing Project neighborhood, and went to Lincoln High School, and from there to UCLA, where I received my degree in theater arts film and my master's fine arts in theater arts film. So I've had a career as a entrepreneur, media executive,
Yes.
and have devoted my life as well to public service from the earliest days of that I can remember with my father. Remember walking picket lines as a 5-6-year-old, and so my father certainly provided me a social context for viewing life and a social conscience, and I've been very dedicated to doing what I can to improve the life of everyone in my circle and the rest of society. I have had a significant amount of public service and look forward to continuing that in this appointment should the council and your committee deem that I'm worthy.
Well, I can just speak for myself that it's, well, I'm sure everybody will. This is, as Bill Rosendahl says, a no-brainer. I just thank you for your commitment to the city and for your desire to be on this committee to help us tackle some of the most difficult concerns that we have. So it'll be an honor to have you as a member of the city family. Are there any other, Mr. Reyes?
I want to take an opportunity to publicly thank Mr. Moctezuma. He's been a steward and a mentor for many, and the influence that you have made at different levels in our community, indeed in our city. I'll even go nationally, given the work you've engaged. But in the arts in particular, I just think the juxtaposition of, for example, the theater center in downtown and working with Councilmember Perry and trying to see how creative we can be in addressing these challenges. It's, for me, it's, we look at the law and you want to help someone who is laying on the sidewalk who chooses not to get help. And you see how they are being physically harmed because of the cold and the vermin that's on them, with them, and it's just the fact that we can't help them if they choose not to be helped. And yet the impact there just ripples throughout that whole location, and it happens over and over again in my district. And how we engage that, not only in my district, but throughout the city. So how we engage that, I think, is going to be a challenge, as well as a need to have a person like yourself who can, the entrepreneurial spirit you bring to this organization. We're going to need it in these next few years, given our fiscal challenges. So thank you for stepping up. It'll be, I think, one of those pivotal points in the city and how we respond to this crisis. So thank you so much for everything you've done and everything you continue to do. Thank you.
Mr. Alarcon?
Yeah, when I was the vice chair of the pension committees in the Senate with Nel Soto and working on improving our pension system and the investments that the pension system was looking into, particularly with regard to minority business firms and investing in minority communities and the underserved communities. Worked with Mr. Esparza on investment strategies. But when I established the committee in the Select Committee to End Poverty in California, one of the first people I talked to was Mr. Esparza. And we had the most interesting conversation, and I know that Mr. Esparza has some, driven by a philosophy that has some real sound thinking about issues of poverty. Some of the global remedies that are needed and probably won't come in the short term, but also a very pragmatic view of what needs to be done in that area. So transitioning from the pension system into poverty again, I know that this is a unique person who has a look into the wealth of our nation, but a hand in issues of poverty at the same time. And until we bridge the gap, we're going to continue to see poverty accelerate, particularly given the period of time that we're in with regard to our economy. So I want to thank you for accepting this appointment. I think there's a lot of things you could do with your time that might affect your bottom line personally, that are not going to be utilized for that purpose, but are going to be used for building ideas for improving the conditions for the least among us in Los Angeles. And so that can only be a new jewel in your big crown in heaven, because I know that that you're going to add a new, fresh look at how we deal with issues of dire poverty. And so thank you very much for your service, and it'll be a pleasure to continue to work with you. By the way, I chair the Jobs Committee, which incorporates the Master Plan to End Poverty for Los Angeles, and so we will be working on the issues of homelessness with you on that committee.
Thank you.
Ms. Perry?
I say we move to approve.
Okay, then, without objection, we'll forward this recommendation to the City Council, which will be heard today in about 45 minutes. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Item 3.
Item 3 is a communication from the mayor relative to the reappointment of Mr. Alejandro Ortiz to the Community Redevelopment Agency Board of Commissioners for the term ending November 4th, 2013.
Mr. Chair, can I say a few words?
Yes, you can. Go right ahead.
I don't know if others have lots of questions for Mr. Ortiz, but I feel compelled that I have to publicly and personally thank him, and thank him again for his willingness to serve in very, very difficult circumstances, and to hold on to his common sense, hang on to a sense of balance and integrity, and a willingness to listen and willingness to consider all sides and to make sure that they are fully vetted. And I attribute much of my ability and success in downtown and in the southern parts of my district in terms of completing projects to his ability to be what I consider to be one of the best commissioners on the board, the redevelopment agency. And I wish there were, there's 5 of you?
It was 7 at the time, actually.
I wish there were more like you on the board, and I feel like we could have gotten a lot more done, but I think we've done pretty well, and you have served under some of the most difficult of circumstances, and you just kept plowing ahead and stayed focused. So I really want to personally thank you, because our redevelopment areas, as you know, have been always rancorous affairs, and I appreciate it. And the fact that you're willing to do it again is just amazing to me. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councilwoman. And
With such a ringing endorsement from Ms. Perry, I absolutely have, that's what I'm saying, I have no questions for you at all.
You shouldn't.
I do.
Good.
I just want to say thank you.
I wasn't going to look at your resume until she made those comments, so I really need to
Okay.
Trust me. No, actually, he's good. Don't.
Question authority.
Question authority only.
working relationship.
Okay, then I will ask you a question. Give you a couple of minutes to dig through there. Why do it again? I mean, if everything, and Jan is about as straightforward as it gets, so it was, to say the least, a challenge, and it was a certain degree of difficulty, and you did it for a while. Why do it again?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for this opportunity and thank Councilwoman Perry for those very kind and undeserved words. I do it with great pleasure. I actually enjoy this post like you wouldn't believe it. And this job actually has been one of the most satisfying jobs I've ever had. And it's true that it's difficult. And the CRA in particular is an agency that deals with a very wide variety of interest groups. And so to keep it's not always easy to keep your bearings. In other words, if you want something done, you feel these strong, tug of wars between the different interest groups, single issue politics, and the tendency is to want to go back and find your own single issue and single-mindedly push in that direction. And so I think the challenge is to keep your eye on the ball, which is the city of Los Angeles, and how do you resolve the issues of housing and in jobs and community, and keep a perspective on these complex issues and try to make a difference.
Then, without objection, we will forward the recommendation to the City Council, and again, it will be heard today at 10 a.m. Thank you so much for your service, and we'll see you downstairs. Ms. Barclay, is there any further business before this committee?
No, sir.
Then this committee, wait, no, he's gone. Then this committee is adjourned.
See you in 2000.
No, I'm not.